Hello and welcome to Georgia Bulldogs Live here on the Georgia Voice of College Football. I am your host, Matt Green. I appreciate everyone who's watching, everyone who's tuning in live. We appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All that good stuff. And hey, you want to get involved? That's why we're here doing it live. Jump in the comments and feel free to make your opinion known. And I might talk about it on the show. Might give you a shout out. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Matt_W__green. Feel free to throw in some sports takes. If it's outrageous, I might respond to you on there. We all love arguing sports on the internet. So let's get started, folks. I'm gonna start with the show tonight. Excuse me. I don't know if you guys saw JD Pickell. He works for On3. He's kind of On3's version of Josh Pate, basically. But JD Pickell had a take recently that 2024 was the best coaching job of Kirby Smart's career. He said, unpopular take. The 2024 season was the best coaching job that Kirby Smart has done to this point. And I'm torn when I hear this take. And he cited the things you might suspect. Georgia had its flaws this year, had a really tough schedule, and found ways to win the SEC championship. So found a way to go 10-2 or 11-2, I should say, and win the SEC. Unfortunately, lost your first college football playoff game. But I'm torn when I hear this take because people said something similar to Nick Saban a year ago in 2023, and I think I said something similar. Like that was a flawed Alabama team. And Milroe had a lot of flaws, and somehow that Alabama team just got the best out of the sum was the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I think that is what you could say about that Alabama team a year ago. I'm still kicking Georgia for losing that 2023 SEC championship. I feel like Georgia's the best team in the country in 2023. Could have won back to back to back, but as we saw on Sunday, it's tough to go back to back to back for sure. But so I understand where you're coming from when you say this was Kirby Smart's best coaching job of his career. Like it sounds outrageous to say. First I'll break down why I agree with this opinion. It sounds outrageous to say for this preseason number one team in college football that won 2 of the last national championships, but I do feel like this team overachieved in 2024. And it's because they had their flaws, and we talked at lengths about it. They couldn't block anyone. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't catch the ball. They had the worst run defense since Kirby Smart got here. And somehow this team found a way to win the SEC championship. So from that perspective, I can definitely understand how you could say this is the best. I hope my connection's not bad. I think I'm lagging over there. Thanks everyone for sticking with me here. But on the same token, on why it was not his best coaching job of his career is pretty much every weakness that I just discussed. That's also a reflection on Kirby Smart's coaching. So this was still a really talented football team. Like, especially you've seen going into after the Senior Bowl practices and everything. And now, more NFL draft talk is kind of, ramping up. This was a really talented team, and they were inconsistent all season long. And inconsistency, more times than not, that kind of comes down to coaching. Like maybe you want to put it more on the position coaches. Maybe it's James Coley's fault. Maybe it's Stacy Searle's fault. Maybe it's Mike Bobo's fault. Whatever you want to say, Georgia's replaced a bunch of good coaches in recent years. Fran Brown's a head coach now. And a head coach now. Like there's a bunch of them out there. Del McGee's a head coach now. So there's a bunch out there that have come from Kirby Smart's staff, and maybe you put it on those guys. Dan Lanning's the best OC in the NFL, or Dan Lanning. Todd Monken's maybe the best OC in the NFL right now. So Georgia's obviously lost a lot off their coaching staff in recent year. And the one reason I kind of pushed back on it being his best coaching job on the season is because of what I said after the Notre Dame game. It was one of the first games of the entire Kirby Smart era that I kind of put on Kirby Smart. Like just strategically, I thought it was a bad approach to that into that second quarter, and I think he regretted as much by halftime. We don't really have to rehash that. But just because I can think of one game that he kind of mismanaged from that perspective, I think you can make an argument it was not his best coached team. But in terms of talking about the talent on this football team, like I kind of derailed myself there. After all this Senior Bowl talk and the NFL draft talk is ramping up, this team people have started to talk about could have the most players selected in the draft from any school. You got like just off the top of my head, Malachi Starks, Mykel Williams, Jalen Walker, like that's 3 first rounders probably right there. Nazir Stackhouse, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Warren Brinson, Chaz Chambliss, maybe. Did I say Dan Jackson? Trevor Etienne on offense. Arian Smith is tearing it up at the Senior Bowl, apparently. We won't be salty about that at all. Love to see success for Arian Smith. And then Tate Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild, and Jared Wilson. I've heard Scout, I don't know, remember who it was, maybe Matt Miller had a tweet saying like he thinks these guys are plug and play guys in the NFL draft. Like if there's 3 rookie starting offensive linemen coming from this 2024 Georgia team, and this offense performed the way it did, like you have to say that team underachieved. So it's hard to say that that's a good coaching job if you have this amount of talent and you clearly didn't perform well. I mean, the pass blocking wasn't awful. Like Beck wasn't under pressure too much, especially against Ole Miss. Got absolutely abused. Notre Dame really abused that offensive line too. But it was mainly the run blocking this year. Just, second to last in the SEC in rush offense. Like you've just never seen that from a Georgia football team. So that's 13 players off the top of my head. And that's not even mentioning Carson Beck, who's another NFL player. Like 14 guys off this team immediately could have gone into the NFL. So it's an interesting take if you say this is his best coaching job, because I can see the underachieve argument and the overachieve argument. Really, it's kind of interesting. Like if you're starting in August, which is kind of, I think, what we're doing in this like mental exercise, like you're starting with this is the team they have, because in college football, the team you have, you're responsible for talent acquisition. So the team you have is a reflection on like about 75% of what it is to be a head coach, is just getting the talent on campus. So if you're just starting, clean slate, season started, dynasty mode, this is what the team is. I think you could argue that like what they were able to accomplish, like that's if you're JD Piquel judging like the actual coaching job he did, the old CJ. I think that I can agree that this was one of Kirby Smart's finest performances of his career. Because I think that's kind of what you're doing when you're judging Nick Saban in 2023. Like clearly the recruiting, like Alabama was not recruiting at the same level in 2021, 22 as they were in 2011, 2012, those early dynasty days. Like it was completely different, the level of talent Alabama had. And that's one thing that like kind of makes you say like that 2023 performance by Saban was so good, that he found a way to beat a Georgia team that seemed better than Alabama all season long. When they played the same opponents, Georgia was significantly more impressive, but somehow Alabama found a way to do it. But I mean, that team also wasn't the cover wasn't bare on that team. There was probably three first round picks, Terrion Arnold, JC Latham. There was another, I think they had 3 first rounders last year, a couple second rounders. So obviously Alabama was still a talented team. But yeah, you could make that argument if we're just judging. I mean, you lead the nation in drops and have the second worst run offense in the SEC, and you find a way to win the SEC. Like that is definitely one of Kirby Smart's finest performances. I think you could make an argument, which is funny now that looking at the similarities here. The other 2 years that came close to me were 2017 and 2021. And I know everyone, just going back to 2017, that was Mark Richt's players. And obviously Mark Richt didn't leave the cupboard bare. There was a lot of NFL talent still on that team, but man, you just, from what Georgia is in the trenches the last 5-6 years compared to what they were 2017, year 2 of the Kirby Smart era, like that was an impressive seat. Like that team was a second and 26 away from winning a national championship that year with a true freshman quarterback. But what I was going to say, the overlap on all three of these teams now is they all started the season 2017 and 2021 are much more similar. They started the season with a different quarterback. You had, Jake Fromm step in for Jacob Eason, and then Eason's only out, I think, like a month or so. So then the decision is made, no, we're going to keep going with Fromm. Same deal. JT Daniels started 2021, and Stetson was such a polarizing figure amongst this fan base. And half the people thought he was trash, and and clearly they were wrong. But so there was that a dynamic that Kirby Smart had a challenge. Like, and you could argue in 2018, I will always argue that Jake Fromm was so damn good in 2018 that's why Justin Fields didn't get the spot. So people love to throw the Justin Fields decision in Kirby Smart's face. He's had more difficult quarterback decisions to make than any coach I can ever remember. It very rarely does it just go according to plan, with the incumbent starter is automatically the guy the full season. You've seen so many years of Georgia where, the quarterback position is in flux, and Kirby Smart's got to make a tough decision. So that's why 2017 and 2021 I kind of put as two of his better coaching performances too. And also when you go undefeated, the next best thing from an undefeated season is a 1-loss season where you beat the one team you lost to. So also, just from a coaching perspective, yeah, he lost to Nick Saban, turned around and beat that same team that hung for him in the SEC championship. Clearly, he had a good coaching performance that season, and Georgia won the national title. All right, got a couple people chiming in in the chat. Jackson Johnson, Bobo needs to go from UGA. You're not alone in that sentiment, Jackson. I tend to think not. I tend to think Bobo is a damn good offensive coordinator. I would love to know what plays a offensive coordinator should call when his wide receivers can't catch the passes and his offensive line can't block people in the run game. Like it's like playing offense with almost two hands tied behind your back. And like last year, Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator last year, folks. Let's not forget. And the offensive numbers were as good, if not better, than 2022 with Stetson and a similar supporting cast. So, and Bowers and McConkey both had injuries in 2023 as well, and that the offense was still putting up 40 a game. So, I'm gonna stick with Bobo. If Bobo's good enough for Kirby, he's good enough for me. We got Wind, I believe, if I'm pronouncing your name, or is that Will Notre Dame? Will ND. That's what that is. I thought it was like Wind with like 4 eyes. Will ND, how was their O-line and receivers that bad? Was confusing for a program like Georgia. Well, the offensive line, I don't think I can explain. Georgia's recruited at the offensive line, as good or better than anyone in the country. I think that's why a lot of people put some pressure on Stacey Searles after this 2023 season. And the wide receiver group is frustrating but understandable. I think generational means generational. People throw that word around and then don't think about what it means when that generational talent is gone. If a guy's truly generational, you're not going to have one. It's going to be a drop off. You're not going to have one like that for a while. And Brock Bowers is truly generational. Like this guy's like maybe the best tight end in the NFL as a rookie. Like he was insane. And Brock Bowers was one of the best playmakers, if not the best playmaker in college football in 2023. And then you saw Ladd McConkey is a damn good playmaker in his own right. 1,000 yards as a rookie. So losing Ladd McConkey, losing Brock Bowers, and losing Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint, kind of more of an what am I trying to say? I go blank on expressions when I'm on air. Unsung hero, I would say. Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint, just a great blocker, would great at making those physical catches in traffic. So Rosemead, you lose those three. Those are your top three receivers from a year ago. Obviously, and then you go in terms of off the field, Ra Thomas gets kicked off the team. You bring in Colby Young through the chance portal. He gets his suspension. So that's now two more. You lose your best three from a year ago. Now two more that you expect to be two of your best in 2024 are now out of the mix. So, I think that right there definitely, caused a lot of issues for Georgia's receiving group. And then Arian Smith, I have to imagine this guy is just the greatest practice player of all time. Like, I say this with no knowledge of Georgia's practices, but damn, the guy is so damn fast, and he continued to get on the field. And unfortunately, he was one of Georgia's best receivers at getting open. Unfortunately, he had a lot of drops, but yeah, I mean, the receiver group you can understand a little bit more, even though I still think with the talent they had there, Dylan Bell, Dom Lovett, like, it should have been good enough. Anthony Evans, but just, a lot of those guys just, for whatever reason, didn't do much. That receiver room is going to look a lot different in 2025. So, but it is confusing that I don't care who you are, 37 drops. Like, I think if we simulated Georgia's season 100 times, I don't think they end that mini season with 37 drops. Like, I think that's just an outlier of a number. And then I think it gets kind of contagious after that. But yeah, who knows? Hopefully that's behind us in 2025. And then another one here from Will ND. Do you like how everyone hates Kirby now? He's become the new Saban in terms of villainy. I don't feel like Kirby hated, to be honest. And maybe I'm wrong here, but I think become the villains. That just is what it is. All right. Now let's keep it moving here. So there's a lot of guys creating a buzz this off season, and it got me thinking. So Jake Rowe, this is just a thought from the old dome here. So Jake Rowe put out an article. Excellent job for Dawgs HQ. Hope everyone's following along still. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties there. As newcomers, and you had CJ Wiley and Taylor on there. Elijah Griffin and Chase Linton. I think Georgia's going to need those two guys to be, year one impact players, and not necessarily starters, but just guys that can be maybe some of those third down specialists that you've seen in years past for Georgia. Those big time freshmen that get in on third down, they have those packages for them. So I like seeing all those guys updated. Was Ethan Barber, the tight end out of Milton, Georgia. And so this is the one that got me thinking. And I got to give props to my dad for this one. For years ago, he threw this out there. So for the Braves fans out there, as you can see, I rep the Dogs, rep the Bravos. For the Braves fans out there, you got to go back to 2005. My guy Andrew Jones should have been MVP season. So that was the year they had the Bravey Braves, I believe they called them. Bunch of rookies on that team. And among those rookies were Jeff Francoeur and Brian McCann. And Jeff Francoeur, as most of you guys remember if you're diehard Braves fans, Jeff Francoeur was the superstar, the natural on the cover of Sports Illustrated and everything. I think he was like runner-up, rookie of the year, top 3, I think rookie of the year, something like that. And then Brian McCann just more Francoeur is the exciting player, the defensive plays, the arm, the home runs, all that. Brian McCann was just like the quiet, just like consistent, all of a sudden they look up, he's like maybe the best catcher in the league. And Brian McCann, those two guys came to the league the same year, and McCann just proved to be the better player for the longer time. And then my dad, where I have to give my dad credit, was, I want to say this was 2010. Jason Hayward's rookie year. And Jason Hayward came up at the same time as Freddie Freeman. And my dad said, I wonder if this will be a McCann-Francoeur situation where the prospect that's not as big time actually turns out to be the better player in the long run. And if Bill Green didn't hit that one out of the park. So kudos to you, sir. And Freddie Freeman is significantly better Major League Baseball player, significantly longer career than Jason Hayward. I think Hayward's still in the league, but hardly. Freeman's just a perennial all-star. But he's on the Dodgers, so, whatever now. Not a fan anymore. So that got me thinking, and me and my brother and I have talked about this a lot since. There's this long history of Georgia, and it's applied to Georgia now. I'm bringing it back. Stick with me here. So this was kind of a Braves theory, but it rolls over into Georgia because there's a long history of Georgia getting two big-time guys at a position, and the higher ranked one not being as good, or I said another way, the lower ranked one becoming the star. And so look, I just had to name some names because it's like, it feels like something anecdotal that I just have in my head. And then I started going through this, and there's just a lot more names than I even thought of off the top of my head. So off the top of my head, you think about like Todd Gurley coming in the same year as Keith Marshall. Keith Marshall, number one running back in the nation. Todd Gurley was one of the best running backs we've ever seen at Georgia. And it was from day one as a true freshman. Along the same lines, Sony Michel was the higher ranked between him and Nick Chubb. And that one was closer. Nick Chubb was still super highly ranked in his own right. But Chubb just comes in, and he's a different level than Michel, as great as Sony Michel was. And then you had Zamir White, especially on the running back position. I found a lot of the running backs. Zamir White, number one running back in the country coming out of high school. Even he, had his injury issues and all that slowed him down. But now you look at James Cook, and James Cook is one of the best running backs in the NFL right now. And I just kept going down the list. If you told me in 2021, Georgia was going to have the best tight end maybe of all time on that roster, I literally don't know who I would have told you it was. I think I would have told you it was Eric Gilbert. He was the highest ranked tight end recruit of all time to that point, and he transferred into Georgia, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Eric Gilbert at Georgia, it's going to be stupid. And also Darnell Washington getting, I think, LeBron James comparisons in high school. And Darnell Washington was just a physical freak. Like, what was he, 6'8", 260, 270, like hurdling over people? You had both of those guys on that team. And Darnell Washington was the 2020 class, and Eric Gilbert transferred in 2021. And then you have Brock Bowers is the guy who was a big-time recruit, like a top 50 recruit or so, top 100 recruit, not the 5-star that Eric Gilbert or Darnell Washington were. And Brock Bowers is the one that's the generational talent. You can go down the list. Nyland Green was a 5-star in the same class that had Kamari Lassiter and Javon Bullard. You had Azeez Ojulari, or I should say Brenton Cox was a 5-star in the same class as Azeez Ojulari. And Ojulari was another top 100 recruit as well. But that dude, he had the injury as a true freshman. And I want to say it was the year they played Texas, 2018. By the time he got back, coming off of an ACL in the spring, he played like 2 or 3 games at the end of the season and beat out Brenton Cox that quickly. And Brenton Cox played as a true freshman and then transferred. And then I think a lot of Georgia fans said he transferred because he got beat on the depth chart. And Florida fans are like, oh, this guy played as a true freshman. And they think he transferred because he got passed on the depth chart. And then you watch Brenton Cox play at Florida, and you're like, yeah, he definitely got passed on the depth chart. Jermaine Johnson, Azeez Ojulari, who else is that? Nolan Smith. That room is just loaded. And then also like a Fromm over Eason, like we discussed earlier. I'm wondering if if Chris Cole and Justin Williams, like Chris Cole ended up rising up the ranks late in the rankings anyway. So I mean, I think he was a borderline 5-star. I think some people had him as a 5-star, but Justin Williams is the number 1 ranked linebacker in the country, and Cole was the one that you saw get on the field in the Clemson game. Like that was one of those guys I talk about the long history of Georgia, like star on defense, having some of those third down packages. Like Chris Cole kind of looks like one of those guys, and not saying Justin Williams won't be, but he wasn't the first one that got on the field, which is interesting. Brings me back to the main point, is that Elias Williams is one of the recruits I've been most excited to see in a Georgia uniform in this entire class. Freaky athlete. I just want to see them throw up to a guy like that in the end zone. Like we all like dreamed of seeing Darnell Washington being that guy, just throw up the jump balls too. He's like 6'8", different athlete, 3 pounds, I think. Recruits I was most excited about in this class. And now don't sleep on Ethan Barbour, because there's a long history of the lower actually turning out to be the better player. And 6'3", 240. This guy's a tough competitor, helped lead Milton to a state title this year. Don't sleep on Ethan Barbour. That's for sure. All right. And speaking of winning a title, the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. You couldn't be upset to see the Philly Dogs win a Super Bowl. I'll be honest, as a Tom Brady hater, I kind of just want someone else to pass Brady in Super Bowl wins. I don't know if it'll ever happen. I'm sure it won't. 7 Super Bowls is a stupid number. But that was the one thing that was like, maybe Mahomes will pass Brady. That would have been his 4th Super Bowl, what he's like 28 or something like that. That would have been insane. But we'll see. If he's around for another decade like Brady was, then maybe he can pass him. But who knows? So that was the one thing that had me rooting for the Chiefs, or I guess the win-win of this situation was maybe someone can knock off Brady one of these days. But with all these Georgia players on this defense for the Eagles, it was just impossible not to be rooting for Philly. Like Jalen Carter is gonna go down as one of my favorite players to ever play for the Red and Black. Like, what a legacy this guy's got. Jalen Carter, Keely Ringo, Nolan Smith, 3 championship rings in a 4-year period. Just insane. Insane level of winning these guys have been doing. And honestly, and then to hear Jalen Hurts' quote that Georgia's influence on this Eagles defense and the culture and the team and everything, like, you might as well give Kirby Smart a Super Bowl ring to go with those 2 national titles. Like, Kirby Smart essentially built the culture that the Philadelphia Eagles were built on this year. So shout out to Georgia and more in the Eagles and more just free publicity for the Georgia football program. It was amazing. And so that got me thinking. I've done this before, but never on this channel. So I wanna spread this to my new folks, my new followers here. We're gonna go SEC programs as NFL franchises. I call them doppelgangers, counterparts, whatever phrase you want to use. But this is a fun exercise with the NFL being the season just ending. The NFL is on my mind right now. And so I'm going to tell you what every SEC team's NFL counterpart is. Doppelganger. Doppelganger is a better word. But this is it right here. Let me put the fancy graphic on my screen here. Here we go. So if you see right here at the top, let's just get into it. SEC programs as NFL franchises. First and foremost, Alabama Crimson Tide, New England Patriots. I think that one's easy. The Saban, Belichick, ties, all the championships. That one's an easy one to explain. Arkansas, I don't want to lose you guys with Arkansas because Arkansas is not one of my more confident ones. But stick with me with Arkansas. Arkansas is the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings are better. They lost I think 4 of the first 10 Super Bowls or something. The Vikings are better, and I feel like they're one of the most underrated just NFL franchises, period, probably over the last decade. It's crazy how many playoffs they've gone to when you actually look at it, even though you never really consider them one of the contenders. But I think most people don't really understand how good of history both of these franchises have. Arkansas was competing for championships, won a couple national championships, I think back in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. At least won a couple Southwest conferences, and they were a big-time football program. The Vikings lost, like I said, 4 of the first 10 Super Bowls. They're one of the more consistent franchises out there. This one, I'm open to other suggestions. You could also throw out the Chargers or somebody. I don't know. This is not one of my. So throw in the comments if you have a better one for Arkansas. But I'm going with the Vikings for now. Auburn and the New York Giants. This one I'm confident about. These two teams are either terrible or they win the whole damn thing. They're just mediocre. They win championships and then they'll have a mediocre season the next year. It's just kind of crazy how many times we've seen Auburn and the New York Giants do that. They're 2 of the big brands, but it's kind of been a while since they were really competitive at this point. But watch out. Next time they're good, they'll probably win the whole damn thing. LSU, I had 2 candidates for LSU. I went the Pittsburgh Steelers for LSU because they're just one of the most consistent programs out there, multiple titles in recent history. But for that reason, they also feel like recent history is much better than their older history. And obviously the Steelers' older history is better than the current. And for that reason, you can convince me of the Baltimore Ravens also for LSU. Also the purple in there. Maybe that's influencing me. So that's another option there. But I like Steelers. And then you go Mississippi State and the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are the most irrelevant. I think I'm lagging again. I'm sorry for everybody that's tuning in. My thing's lagging tonight. But if you didn't hear me, I'm gonna repeat myself. The Arizona Cardinals are the most irrelevant franchise in the NFL, and Mississippi State is the most irrelevant program in the SEC. There's just nothing interesting about them. They haven't won anything. The Cardinals, I know they made the Super Bowl run that one year with Fitzgerald and Kurt Warner, but Mississippi State made the one run to the SEC championship with Fred Smoot and who else back in '98. So yeah, they got one almost chance at the one almost bite at the apple. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Ole Miss and the Miami Dolphins. This is an easy one to me. All flash, no substance. Both these teams seem good and they feel like they should be good. And for whatever reason, they're not as good as it feels like they should be. It's all flash, no substance. Texas A&M and the Cleveland Browns. So this is an interesting one because A&M's got one of the longest droughts I think that exists for anyone who actually has won a national championship. I think they won it in 1912 or something like that. The Browns were one of the greatest franchises that existed before the Super Bowl started. So that's 59 years now since the Super Bowl started. So that's a long damn time that they haven't been that great of a franchise. Never made a Super Bowl. A&M never made an SEC championship. Never made a national championship in recent years, recent history. So there's just something about both of them that is so optimistic every single year. It's like the Browns on paper, they got a lot going for them. And then it's like, it's not going to work out. They'll figure out a way it's not going to work out. A&M on paper looks so damn good every year. But it doesn't work out. Let me move my banner here. It's blocking the last one here. And then Texas, the Chicago Bears. And I think a lot of people would hear Texas and think like Steelers, like one of the blue bloods, 49ers or something like that. They just for how those franchises are kind of blue blood programs and a blue blood franchise, if that's a thing in the NFL, you know what I mean? They have the original 6 or something like that, original 8. They just don't have as many championships as you think they would for being the brand that they are. Texas has one national championship in the last like 50 years. And the Bears have won one Super Bowl. And I know they won multiple NFL championships and everything, just like the Browns before the Super Bowl era. But for as big time of franchises and program as they are, they don't have the trophy case that you would kind of expect, but they do have like the legendary players and all that, and still like the aura, but not necessarily the championship trophy case. And then let's go up to the other side. The Florida Gators are the Dallas Cowboys. And this was the team of the 90s. And it's been a while since they were a truly championship contender. And I know the Urban Meyer years were since the 90s, so they don't have the same drought that the Cowboys have. But just in terms of like the brand and like how good they should be and what they've actually been, I got to put Florida and the Cowboys right there in that same level. And so this one is a funny one because I originally made this list back in 2021 when Georgia had won one championship. And now this list just fits even better. Georgia, and before they drafted all the Georgia players, Georgia's the Philadelphia Eagles. Like these two teams both have won 2 titles recently in the last like 3-4 years. I guess the other Eagles ones, what, like 2019 or something like that. I'm not as good at my years with the NFL. But yeah, you look at a long drought. Like these were 2 of the most consistent. Like Georgia's one of the most consistent programs that had not won a national title in all of college football. Like you could, every time you'd look at one of those lists, you'd have whatever the best record in the last 10 years, best record in the last 20 years, best record in the BCS era, like whatever they kind of, sample size they would do. It would be 5-6 teams that had won a national championship, and then Georgia would be number 7, or Boise State would probably be on that list too. But like Georgia would be right there as the best that had not won a championship. And that's what the Eagles were for years. The Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb years, like they were one of the most consistent franchises year in and year out. And for whatever reason, they just never could win the big one. And also the fans are just crazy. Georgia fans bark at people. Eagles fans fight people. It's Eagles and Georgia go well together. And now Eagles are building their team through Athens. So it works even better. This is one of the other ones that I'm not as confident about. So stick with me here. Kentucky Wildcats are the Cincinnati Bengals. And not just because they're located like an hour or 2 away from each other. It feels like obviously the Bengals right now are better. Like they're a team with more potential and everything. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all that. But for the most part, it's just years of being a cellar dweller. Like Mark Stoops, I feel like elevated them to being respectable, like Marvin Lewis kind of did. Like they're respectable now. And obviously the Bengals made it to a Super Bowl. But in general, just most of the history, nothing really to get you excited. And the other one I wrote out was the Chargers also. Some exciting offenses at times, like Kentucky had in the oh man, why am I blanking on Hal Mummy? The Hal Mummy years. So they're exciting offenses, but they've never really sustained success. So That's another one I'm open to suggestions on. Kentucky and Arkansas are the two I feel least confident about. Missouri is the Houston Texans. That's solid. Nothing special. The Texans' history, obviously, is since 2002. They started as a franchise. Missouri doesn't really feel like they have much of a history. It feels like all of their best history is of the 21st century. And they're solid. Nothing special. And and that's why I put the Houston Texans. South Carolina is the Atlanta Falcons. And I feel like Atlanta Falcons, South Carolina, late 2000s, 20 teens, best years ever. Best years of all time. The rest of the history is basically terrible. So South Carolina doesn't have a 28-3 on their on their resume. I don't think it's one of those. So Carolina and the Atlanta Falcons are actually has aged even better since I first did this. Like I said, I believe I did this back after the 2021 season the first time. This has aged even better. Tennessee is the Washington Commanders, formerly the Redskins. There's a history of titles there. Tennessee is one of the big time programs of all time. I think top 10 in wins of all time, like multiple national titles. The Redskins, I think, have 3 Super Bowls. I want to say with 3 different coaches, or is it 3 different quarterbacks? I could be confusing that. The Redskins have a lot of history, but it has been a long time since they were like even relevant. And I did this, but like I said, back in 2021. Now that the Commanders, Jaden Daniels, they actually have like a future. Now this kind of works even better because it's been a long time since either of these teams was like a true championship contender. And I don't think Tennessee is still a championship contender, but they at least have hopes of being a championship contender now under Josh Heupel. And that's more you could say under Jeremy Pruitt or Derek Dooley or Butch. Let's say Butch Davis. Butch Jones. There we go. Brain fart live air. Butch Jones. Yeah, they almost became a contender under Butch Jones. Those people kind of just remember his tenure as worse than it really was. It wasn't the Derek Dooley years or anything. It at least had some hope, some good moments, especially. But it's been a while since Tennessee was a contender, and I mean, being at the 9 seed in the college football playoff last year, like it makes it feel like they were a little closer than they were in 2022. But I'm not sure they were actually any closer in 2024. But we'll see. With Nico coming into year 3, this is going to be a big year for the Tennessee Vols. Big expectations, I should say. This one could change a little bit after what the Lions have done the last couple of years, but Vanderbilt is the Detroit Lions because Vanderbilt is just the bottom of the barrel, and the Detroit Lions history is the absolute bottom of the barrel. I know they have some NFL championships pre-Super Bowl, but that might as well not exist. So, Lions, couple more good seasons like they had these last 2 years, and they might get out of Vanderbilt's territory. Might have to find another one. Maybe the Arizona Cardinals will become the new Vanderbilt. And then the last one, the Oklahoma Sooners are the Green Bay Packers. I think historically, arguably number 1. Like you could make an argument for Oklahoma being like the number 1 program historically in college football history, kind of like the Packers. And they're just they just consistently compete at a high level every single year. And they just haven't won many titles recently. So it's what the Packers have the 1 Super Bowl under Rodgers. So it's 2 Super Bowls since the original 2, right? They went back to back, and then Favre won 1 and Rodgers won 1. So they've won 2 championships in the last 50 years. Oklahoma historically, they haven't been quite that. Actually, maybe it is something like that because 2000 now, like that last championship was 25 years ago. So Oklahoma, even though they had the 03 championship appearance, 2008 championship appearance, 2000, I skipped one, 2004, they got smashed by USC. That's three national championship appearances right there off the top of my head. Obviously, Georgia had the Rose Bowl game against them, and then multiple other playoff appearances. But Yeah, it's they're consistently one of the best programs around, just like the Packers. But it's been a while since they won a championship. So that's what I got. Throw it in the comments where I'm wrong. Obviously you'll agree with all of these, but I'd love to know what you guys think about my list here. And also, you gotta love this great graphic here. That's that's the hard work I do for these people, for my YouTube viewers here. All right, and I'll leave you with this, folks. Georgia basketball tonight. Georgia 16-8 on the season, going at number 8 Texas A&M. Georgia has lost 6 of their last 8. The silver lining is that 4 of those 6 losses are against top 10 teams. The downside of that, however, is A&M is also a top 10 team. So Georgia's 0-5 on the road in the SEC this year. One of their biggest weaknesses has been just the guard play, just turning the ball over too much. And you're facing a Texas A&M team with 2 really good scorers, Wade Taylor the fourth and Zurich Phillips, both also average over 1.5 steals a game. So that's not a great combination. A perimeter score as well as dudes that are going to take the rock from you. So we'll see what happens in that one. A&M is 18-5 and has won 5 of the last 6 coming into this game. So they are really hot. But the bright side, the bracketologist still has Georgia now Georgia's listed as one of the last 4 in. So they're still holding on there at 12 seed, I think, right now. And Texas A&M is currently a 2 seed. And right now in the bracketology, 3 of the 4 1 seeds are SEC schools, and 2 of the 4 2 seeds are SEC schools. So 5 of the top 8 is just insane what the SEC is doing right now. So this is the most loaded basketball conference I've ever seen. I think Georgia's in like 12th place, and they're still potentially getting in the tournament. So this would be Georgia's best win of the season if they can get it done. So going on the road in College Station will not be easy. I know that's what you folks are going to be tuning into right now. That's going to be starting at 9 o'clock here. So that's what I'm going to be watching as well. So I appreciate everyone who tuned in live. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Tell your family about the channel. Go Dogs.